Hey everybody, it's GauntletX and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today we're going to be playing another Arena Cube draft. Without further ado, let's just get into it. Ton of incredibly powerful options in Pack 1 as always. Cards like Wormcoil Engine and Titania's Command being really strong finishers. Wormcoil Engine being a super sweet one because it can fit into any deck. That being said, there are tons and tons and tons of super strong finishers in the cube. I'm looking a little bit more for the early game plays that are quite valuable to be scooped up early, and I can grab finishers later in the draft. So I don't think I'm going to pick pack one either of those. There's of course Torbrin as a huge mono red card, but nothing else for red in the pack. Got Rada for red-green ramp kind of stuff. Memory Deluge is a great card for any blue kind of controlling deck that wants to play stuff at instant speed. Wedding Announcement is a great card for any white deck. Primarily aggro and mid-range, but even control can use the card decently well. I might want to go with Lovestruck Beast here though. It's just a card I enjoy a lot, and I really like the showcase artwork on this card, so I might be a little biased just artwork-wise, but flavorfully and mechanically, gameplay-wise, I think it is a very cool card, very good card. 1 mana 1/1 and then a 3 mana 5/5 that can only attack if you still have a 1/1 on the board. Very, very good stats for the mana commitment there. So I'm going to start with the Lovestruck Beast here, see if we can play something green today. Some very good cards in pick 2. We have a Bloodthirsty Adversary in red, a nice early game haster that can get kicked later to recast something from the grave. Chain Whirler is obviously just a mono red card with that triple red mana cost. History of Benalia is going to be great for any white deck, not really control, but aggro or mid-range. So something super aggressive or something in the middle can use History of Benalia pretty well. We could go for like a green-white sort of aggro-y deck here. Somewhat of a token sub-theme already between Beast and History. Seems like a decent place to go. Again, Sanctuary Warden, super strong 6 mana card, but those are a little more implaceable to me. 3-Wood Inspector is quite a solid 1-drop. Get a 1/2 on the board and be able to sack a clue to draw a card later. Plenty of lands in here as well, but I think I'm going to go History of Benalia. Just a ton of stats for only 3 mana there. Pick 3. I've got a Lurrus in here. It is quite fun to draft around Lurrus as your companion. Focusing on white-black as your main colors, but if you get enough mana fixing, playing a third. That's a pretty fun way to draft a deck, and I did that once before, and it actually went pretty well. Not perfectly, but well enough. There is a Defiler of Vigor to stick to green here, though, which is a monstrous card. 5 mana 6/6 trample. Puts a +1/+1 counter on all of your creatures whenever you play a green permanent. Kind of scary. Kind of like the scariest thing in here. Yeah, I like Defiler or Lurrus as pretty good options. Even if you don't run Lurrus as your companion, it's pretty good in most white decks in this cube. There's a lot of really good 1/2 mana white permanents. Coin flip between Defiler and Lurrus. I'm going to go for the Lurrus since it's cheaper. And a lot of white stuff in here and nothing in green, so looks like a decent win on that coin flip there, last pick. Portable Hole's quite nice, being a nice removal spell against aggressive strategies or cheap permanents in general. If your opponent manages to blow this up to stop it from removing your card, then you can recast it with a Lurrus, because Lurrus can recast any permanent, so that's kind of cool. Probably go Portable Hole here. Want to be super aggro. Ranger of Eos is a little bold to take before you have some 1-drops, but it does end up being really good in your deck if you have 3 or more of them. Kayla's Command is generally just a good card that doesn't really need any work, so that'd be the safer pick out of the other two, but I'm going Portable Hole for sure. Tireless Tracker is a really nice value engine, and it's not particularly expensive, just a 3-drop here. Get a clue token every time you get a landfall trigger, and you can sacrifice, well, when you do sacrifice those clues, you're getting +1/+1 counters on the tracker, making it bigger and bigger throughout the game. Pretty sweet card. There's a Showdown of the Skalds for some Boros aggro stuff, but I've been playing a lot, and I mean a lot, of red, so take the solid green card here with Tireless Tracker. Banalish Marshal for mono white. It's quite solid, or if we just end up in heavy white, we only have 2 non-white cards drafted so far, so could get there. There's nothing in green for us. The main other color pair that looks open here is blue-white, seeing as there's 3 blue cards in the pack, a couple of which are pretty solid, All Run and Impulse. And then Sphinx's Rev is a very, very good blue instant for a blue-white control deck. But I mean, Lurrus and History Benalia really don't look that controlling, and Benalish Marshall probably not going to be very good if we are white-green, but maybe somehow we end up as green just being a splash. Our only green cards are only requiring 1 green mana to cast. I like Esper Sentinel a good amount. Just a 1 mana 1/1, but the text on the card's pretty nice. It's going to tax your opponent's first non-creature spell each turn, or let you draw a card when they cast it. If you draw just 1 card off of that, it ends up being quite good. Maze Mind Tome's a nice little card draw engine that fits in anything. Courser's quite a solid green land ramp / card draw engine. So Sentinel, Courser, Maze Mind Tome. This is some kind of alchemy card that I don't really want to read. Sack a land, get 2 other lands, it's fine. I think I'm going to go Courser here. Courser works really well with landfall triggers like Tireless Trackers, so that could be very good. Do get a Restoration of Eiganjo here, pick 8. That's a really easy pick. I think this card is very, very, very good. And looking at the pack that we opened up, I'm pretty sure every white card that was in this pack is back, which is an incredible sign for white in general. I like Sarah Paragon a lot, just like the bigger version of Lurrus. I do like Wedding Announcement a whole ton as well. It is a little bit cheaper, but I already have 4 3-mana cards, so I'm kind of clumped up there. I think Wedding Announcement's actually probably a little bit better because it's a little more consistent, harder to deal with than the Paragon, but for mana curve reasons, we'll take the Paragon here. Paragon's more explosive when it doesn't get removed, but Wedding Invitation is just a lot harder to remove. We've got a Thraben Inspector and Sanctuary Warden. That's all of the white cards in this pack wheeling as well, or at least all the notable ones. I'm going to go for the 1-drop here because if every single white card that we're seeing in every pack is coming back around to us, that means no one's drafting the white cards. We can potentially actually just push to mono white for this Benalish Marshall, where we'll want the cheapest white cards in each pack to stay as aggressive as possible. And there we go. Ranger of Eos over Settle the Wreckage because it's much better for aggro, which is what mono white would be. And this is just the most open strategy in the pod in terms of strong strategies, so I'm going to go for it here. I think Felidar Retreat's a little better for mono white aggro than Elspeth Conquers Death. Elspeth Conquers Death is really good for a mid-rangey deck. Getting rid of a big permanent on your opponent's board, taxing them a little bit, and then bringing something back from a grave. I think for aggro, Felidar Retreat's kind of just a better card. I mean, they're both more for kind of mid-range than aggro, but with the Retreat, when you landfall, you can put a counter on all your creatures. I don't know, maybe I actually take Elspeth Conquers Death, because in my monocolored aggro decks in this cube, I tend to play a pretty low land count as well, so landfall triggers are going to get really scarce after I have 4 lands on board. Might actually go Elspeth Conquers Death. I could see this being a really good way to get back into the game, right? Because your opponent plays a really big card to try to stabilize, like an Elesh Norn or something, that like wipes your board and sticks around, or a Massacre Worm. Then you can use this to get that thing off the board and eventually bring back the best creature or planeswalker from your grave. It's like a good recovery piece. Seems fine. Well, these cards are incredible. A lot more players are going to be interested in the Wandering Emperor than Legion's Landing, so I'm going to take the Wandering Emperor and plan to wheel the Legion's Landing. Steel Seraph's really good as well, but I think it's a little bit behind the other two. Wandering Emperor is just one of the best planeswalkers, period, just on Arena, and Legion's Landing is really, really good for the mono-white deck, because for 1 mana, you're getting another just 1 mana aggressive creature, just a 1 mana 1/1 lifelink, not that exciting, but it synergizes so well with the deck, where as soon as you attack with 3 creatures, you're flipping this into a land, so that's helping you ramp up into your big spells a little bit early, and gives you a mana sink to keep making more creatures with the secondary ability on Adonto there.
You're just underwhelming.
Alright, so now we have not a lot. We have a Fateful Absence. This is the kind of deck that would want it, an aggro deck where spend 2 mana to kill their very expensive card, and you don't really care that they're getting a card back out of it because you're trying to just kill them as soon as you get it out of the way. I feel like Fateful Absence is pretty bad in more controlling decks, because with controlling decks, you're trying to go toe-to-toe with a bunch of 1-for-1 removal and stuff, and this is a 2-for-1 removal spell in your opponent's favor. You spend a card, you spend Fateful Absence to kill their creature, but you give them a card back with the clue token. So you actually fall behind using this in a control deck. But I think in aggro it's good. Sky Sovereign's also fine. Don't think a Mirror's Call is great at 7 mana. But the giant upside of that card, of course, is the fact that it's just going to replace the Plains, and then that Plains is going to be significantly better if we flood out. So it is still a card I'm interested in, but not over the Fateful Absence, I think. This pack is very easily Maul of the Skyclaves, turning any creature on your board into a must-kill kind of win condition. It's going to shred your opponent's life total in the sky really quickly and be monumentally hard to block with that first strike. Leyline Binding is actually horrible in mono white, so this pack's pretty much a dud for us. I will take a Mind Stone, but I don't think I'll be playing it. Dauntless Bodyguard is very easily the pick here. Get some more 1-mana creatures to go with our Ranger of Eos, and this one's a particularly good one. It synergizes incredibly well with Lurrus, where I can sacrifice this to give Lurrus Indestructible and then use Lurrus to recast this from the grave. Rabble Rousing, easy pick up here. It's the only white card, and it's a pretty good finisher at 5 mana. Somewhat of a win more card. You have to be in a position where you can freely attack your opponent with a lot of creatures, and if you're in a position like that, you're probably winning the game anyway. But it's still just really, really hard to come back from. Adeline is quite similar, but only 3 mana, which is busted. Adeline is a super good card, one of the best white cards on the cube. Easily we wield the Felidar Retreat. Not getting a lot of 1 and 2 mana cards here, which is really awkward for us. I don't think it's because other people are drafting them. I think they're just not showing up. As you can see, like, we wield the only white card out of that pack, and stuff like that. So gotta just cross our fingers, and what we're really looking for in the final pack is more 1 and 2 mana plays, because this is not a good curve for a very aggressive deck. We need more here, more cheap plays. We did wield the Legion's Landing, and we will definitely have to play that over the 3 mana Steel Seraph. Again, it's a very good card, but 3 drops are a lot more replaceable in this cube. There's just so many good ones. So yeah, we are 100% in the most open color, or one of the 2 most open colors at worst. But it feels like there are probably a few white cards that we've seen that haven't come back around in the packs after everybody's seen them, but it doesn't feel like it's a lot of them. Like now I'm getting a Miria's Call back. Feels like the majority of white cards we've been interested in are just flying all the way around the table and no one else is interested. No one's interested in Approach or Yorion. We'll grab Yorion because we're definitely not an Approach deck. No one wants Leyline Binding. We have a whole nother pack to pick from here, and we already have 22 cards in our deck. And that's not putting Leyline Binding in. So we already have a 23 card, 17 land deck. Every single pick from now on is just going to be improving our deck, which is awesome. Cave of the Frost Dragon, probably pretty sweet for us. Restoration Angel's also quite solid. I don't know which is more likely to wheel. It feels like whatever one we take, we're almost definitely going to wheel the other one. I actually think Cave of the Frost Dragon might be a little better for our deck because we have so much stuff to do at 4 mana already. So I'm going to take the Cave and probably wheel Restoration Angel. And then we just have both of those anyway. Alright, this pack is a very easy Intrepid Adversary. Venerated Loxodon's also pretty good. That's the card we're going to hope to wheel. But the Intrepid Adversary is most importantly a card we can play as a very solid rate for a 2 mana creature, which we're really missing out on. Again, 2 mana is actually the most empty slot. We have 4 1-drops now, and only 2 2-mana cards, neither of which are creatures. So Intrepid Adversary fills in an incredibly important slot on our mana curve. And the other thing that's nice about it is if we draw it later in the game, we get to just dump a bunch of extra mana into it and make it even better. Super good pickup here, Adonto Vanguard, another premium 2-mana creature, exactly what we're looking for. Phyrexian Missionary is much less of a premium creature, especially because we're not going to be playing black here at all. But a 2-mana 2/3 lifelink is still worth the cut if I need more 2-mana creatures. If I don't get like 5 other good ones, we'll play it, fill out the curve. That way we get to cut like Mind Stone here. Which, speaking of, we're at 26 cards now, so we get to start just cutting the worst card every pick. Play 15 lands right now. 26 cards, there's 1 land in here. Probably going to be about a 15 land deck. So every pick we make from now on, we get to kind of build our deck as we go. Cutting the worst card out of each pack. Or the worst card out of our deck out of each pick. Like Leyline Binding is probably the next cut as a 6-mana removal spell. Alright, here's some great 1-drops. I love Usher of the Fallen and Selfless Savior. I'm going to take the one that's a cheeky combo with Luris, because I just think it's really funny. Fun to do if you ever assemble those 2 cards together. So, probably the dumb pick. Probably supposed to take the card that's better in more occasions. Right, because Usher of the Fallen, just getting a 2/1 on the board is probably better most of the time, but whenever we have a Luris on board or a Sarah Paragon, it'll be really nice to have the Selfless Savior, so we'll take that, and honestly, we'll probably wheel the Usher of the Fallen anyway. Hopeful Initiate here versus Blade Splicer. Blade Splicer is really good with Restoration Angel if we get that card back, but again, a mountain of 3-mana stuff to do, not enough 1s and 2s. We'll take the Hopeful Initiate. Birth of Melodis is technically a 2-mana white card, but it's not going to make the cut in this deck. It's good in a control deck. It just sits there, gains some life, makes a 0/4. Not stuff that aggro wants to do. I'll take a Caves of Koilos in here that will run over Plains for our Phyrexian Missionary, because we're not a deck that's going to take Day of Judgment. We could actually use Blade Historian, though. This actually wins games out of absolutely nowhere. Yeah, this literally just doubles your damage output. It's probably more valuable than being able to occasionally kick a Missionary. We did wield a Restoration Angel. Wield the Venerated Loxodon. Genuinely feels like we might be the only white player. Like, if anybody else is in white, they're probably just in like 5 color. Or white is like their 3rd color or something like that. Well, was interested in trying out a little more green decks here today, but I think it's impossible to argue that white was not the most open color at this draft pod. Still ended up really low on those white 2-drops though, which is pretty awkward. Just weren't a lot opened up. Here it looks like. Yeah, I mean, we got the Usher back here with only 3 cards left. I don't like Heliod even if I am mono white. Heliod's fine. Actually, Heliod's probably pretty fine in here. Heliod has similar issues to like rabble-rousing, where Heliod's good in positions where you're already probably in a pretty good spot. And just doesn't help you at all when you're on the back foot. Like, if you're on the defensive and you can't really afford to be attacking in, rabble-rousing is a horrible draw and a horrible play. Heliod's very similar, where like you need a devotion of 4, a white devotion of 4 on board outside of Heliod for Heliod to actually be attacking and blocking and doing anything here, because it's pretty much never worth the mana commitment to just sit there giving things lifelink unless it's very late in the game. So for an aggro deck like this, we're pretty much never using the activated ability on this. But we do have some incidental life gain. And we actually, in our deck specifically, we have some cards that can trigger Heliod pretty easily off of just like 2 permanents being on board. Like if I have a Benalish Marshal out, that's 3 white symbols, and then Heliod makes 4. So if I have Benalish Marshal and pretty much any other card in my deck on the board, Heliod will be active. So Heliod's a little easier to trigger in this deck than most. But my big problem with Heliod is I think people overrate it a bit, because they'll put it in decks where, based on your average card, you have to have on average like 3 other permanents than Heliod on board. And it's like, if you have 3 other white permanents on the board, you're probably already in a pretty good position. Like if you need to have 2 single white cards and a double white card for Heliod to be attacking and blocking. Pretty bad. Either that or the activated ability is a little overrated. It's definitely not great in an aggro deck. It can be pretty solid in a mid-range deck with a lot of life gain. But an aggro deck is not going to sit here dirtling around with that activated ability, trying to get those +1/+1 counters added. So Heliod's definitely in the maybe pile. I think I'm cutting 2 lands right off the bat, because I still have 16 lands when you count the Emeria Shattered Skyclave here. Move the 6 drops to the side. Rabble Rousing, I already spoke my piece on. Urion's a bit slow, bit expensive here. But if we have like a ton of really good enter the battlefield effects, Loxodon definitely doesn't count because you have to convoke for Loxodon to do things. But Yorion works decent with Elspeth Conquers Death. Doesn't really do anything with Kyodai. Does work with Ranger of Eos. So Elspeth Conquers Death, Ranger of Eos, Wandering Emperor works with her as well. Works with History of Benalia potentially. Restoration of Eiganjo potentially. Although I don't think we'd ever want to do that on Restoration of Eiganjo, so I'll count that off the list. Worked with Intrepid Adversary, although if we're casting Yorion for 5, we won't have the extra mana to dump into this. So I won't count that either. Works with Legion's Landing. Dragon Inspector, so like 6 different cards it works with, and none of them are like really good combos with Yorion. So I'm not that into it. Oh, we didn't wheel the Blade Splicer. That was the most notable white card we didn't get back that pack. We're not playing anything to sideboard, so let me switch to this view here as we go deck building. I mean, I really just want to cut out some more 4 and 5 mana cards here. Like a Felidar Retreat. I think I'm going to keep Restoration Angel but cut Yorion, because I feel like most of the time I'm only going to have like 1 permanent with a good enter the battlefield effect instead, in which case Restoration Angel is just 1 mana less than Yorion for an instant speed version with 1 less power and toughness, which is probably generally just better. Like, I feel like I only want one of these two between Restoration Angel and Yorion. Although for curve reasons, I've got a lot of 4s. So maybe Yorion over Restoration Angel. But that just feels wrong to me, because of Restoration Angel being faster. And fast being what this deck wants. I don't like Lunarch Veteran very much in here. Lunarch Veteran's the kind of card I'm only going to put in here if I leave Heliod in, and I don't think I'm leaving Heliod in. Although it is, again, having like a triple white card like Benalish Marshal, a decent amount of double white cards in here, does make Heliod a little more viable. But I'm still not that interested. Let's get rid of the 6-drop Intervention. Get rid of the Rousing, it does feel pretty win more. Get rid of the Veteran, the Heliod, get rid of that combo. Leyline Binding is just a 6 mana removal spell, so really bad in here. Felidar Retreat because we're cutting down on lands. Maybe I cut both Angel and Yorion. That might actually be the case. Is Kyodai better than Restoration Angel? Though, Restoration Angel is slightly higher toughness, but Kyodai keeps the permanent indestructible as long as you control this. You can use Kyodai to like win a combat out of nowhere, which you can't do with Restoration Angel. Also, Restoration Angel's actually only creatures, isn't she? Yeah, Restoration Angel's only for creatures, but Yorion is any permanent. If I'm playing one of the two, actually, then I think I'm actually playing Yorion, because Yorion can synergize with our 2 sagas and our Wandering Emperor if we want to get counters back on her. I actually think Kyodai is probably better than Restoration Angel in here. We've got one like really good enter the battlefield effect to do with Restoration Angel, which is Ranger of Eos. But other than that, it's just going to be to flicker a creature to save it from a removal spell most of the time. One solid enter the battlefield with Raven Inspector. But those are the kind of the only two when it comes to creature enter the battlefields. Yeah, I think I like this this build of the deck. Think this is what we're gonna go with. All right, here we have a look at the completed deck we're gonna be playing today. This is gonna be just another solid mono white aggro deck. A multitude of 1-mana creatures, a few 2-mana creatures, and a bunch of very heavy white spells that have quite an impact in an aggressive strategy. Blade Historian's a huge finisher here, doubling up the amount of damage we're going to be dealing, giving our whole board double strike as we attack. Benalish Marshal buffing the entire board, going to be adding a lot of damage output there as well. Adeline spitting out more creatures every time we're attacking. And yeah, that's about it for like the super big bomb, incredibly white resource intensive creatures that we have access to. But other than that, it's a very good curve of a lot of aggressive 1, 2, 3 mana creatures and so on. Some good longevity with Lurrus of the Dream Den letting us recast small cards from our grave. Sarah Paragon letting us recast cards from our grave as well. This one hitting all of our 3-drops as well. So that is the vast majority of our deck that we can recast with Sarah Paragon. And a ton of decent interaction to help get things out of the way and jump over the hoops of whatever defenses our opponent's trying to put up with. Fateful Absence getting things out of the way, Portable Hole getting things out of the way, Maul the Skyclaves jumping up into the sky, Wandering Emperor helping get things off the board, or buff our current board, and Elspeth Conquers Death as well, just getting things out of the way to get that last bit of damage in. So super solid looking mono white aggro deck here, pretty self-explanatory, but pretty sweet and pretty powerful, so we'll see how it does as we head into the gameplay. Here we are now in game 1. We'll keep this hand. Hopeful Initiate and Dauntless Bodyguard to get things started. Gonna be definitely missing out on a couple points of damage here to play the Initiate before the Bodyguard, but then we can actually get some value from the Bodyguard's ability potentially. Because if we do train the Initiate up to being a 2-3, then that would be worth sacrificing a Bodyguard to save, because then our Bodyguard is trading up into keeping a bigger creature around. And if I play them in the other order, then Bodyguard just doesn't have a sacrifice effect whatsoever. So again, we do miss on a few points of damage to play them in that order. I think it's worth it. And I could just spend the turn dropping a Venerated Loxodon here, dealing no damage to my opponent right now. Seems fine, actually. Now my board is very big. They don't have enough mana for a board wipe yet. So if they're going to play any form of interaction, it'll be single target, like Aether Channeler. Probably return the Initiate here. Or the Loxodon, that works too. Okay. Intrepid Adversary. If I kick this Adversary, I buff my board to where Bodyguard has 3 toughness. Can't get blocked and killed by Channeler. Still have Loxodon to play later. Buff Initiate as well. An attack with Initiate brings it up to 4 power with an Adversary on board. Yeah, that's pretty good here. They'll both be 4 power, so anything that the wall blocks will be killing the wall. And they'll both have a high enough toughness to easily survive Aether Channeler blocking them as well. We're not even playing that hard into a Wrath effect or a board wipe because our Dauntless Bodyguard can save our Initiate. But they will kill the Adversary and the Bodyguard. All of the 4 mana board wipes I can think of are Destroy specifically. Alright, and looks like while we did get less damage output early in the game, it was generally worth it in the end, because now we still have a 3-4 on board where we would have had nothing otherwise. Hopefully they don't have both of the board wipes. You know, it looks like they don't have another 4-mana board wipe yet. There are a lot of board wipes in the cube. I think there's only 2 that cost 4 mana at sorcery speed, though. There's definitely Settle the Wreckage at instant speed for 4 mana. There's Farewell at 6 speed. At sorcery speed for 6 mana. That would exile everything. But they clearly don't have it right now because they have 2 mana untapped. Okay, they're going to march, exile our 3-4 here. Having a Cave of the Frost Dragon here that will guaranteed survive any board wipe they play in the future feels pretty valuable. I only hit for 3 damage if I attack with that. Only hit for an extra 3 damage if I attack with that, so I think it's probably a little better to get this restoration going. Thin our deck of some lands and get closer to flipping into a 3-4 Vigilance that keeps making spirits. But obviously next turn we'll just start attacking with the cave. If I don't draw any non-land cards. So opponents, if they have like one more removal spell, they're theoretically in a pretty good position in their control deck. Like, we don't know what's in their hand, but I think most hands in a blue-white control deck can probably win the game from this point. At 5 cards in hand, only having to deal with 2 threats, a Loxodon and a Restoration. Alright. Blow up the Loxodon. There's a 1-for-1 removal spell there. Ooh, wow, that's a good draw. Wowee, that's a good draw. There's no reason to use this ability. So I can just play that as my land for turn. We gotta hope they don't have a counterspell, but I don't have any bait to get rid of their counterspell. Alright, well that seems good, and I can go for the Dauntless Bodyguard Lurrus combo. Now they need exile removal to kill this Lurrus. Could have just went for Intrepid Adversary instead if I wanted to play around exile removal, because that's the stronger creature to put on board. It'll be a 4-2, I believe. Yep, it does buff itself, so it would have been a 4-2. They're going to put both our creatures back in our hand. Yep, and then they cast something for free. Omen of the Sea, okay. Not that bad for us. Again, we've got a really big lead life total-wise, but with their number of cards in hand, I think this game's still looking pretty even. All things considered. Life total is definitely not everything, especially in an aggro versus control matchup like this. That being said, them going down to 7 life is very spicy. Very spicy for me. Don't really want to play into a Farewell. Am I just going to hit them with this cave twice? Is that the plan? Just don't even play Lurrus this turn? I mean, that actually seems kind of reasonable to me. And then I still have, like, I'll have Dauntless Bodyguard in the graveyard for when I do play Lurrus, so I can still just do Lurrus Bodyguard if I really need to in the future. Yep, this played really well against their board wipe. Alright, sack the Omen to Scry 2, and that's definitely game. We just had a really resilient deck at getting around their board wipes that they were trying to use to survive there, and try to use that as a way to turn things around and win the game, so... Huge stuff from Dauntless Bodyguard this game. Getting us through a Day of Judgment and a time wipe with still more threats on board was massive. Luris, of course, being a very key piece as well, letting us recast the bodyguard. Excellent stuff. Oh yeah, and Cave of the Frost Dragon. Everything that showed up did some great work for us, so very happy with how that game played out. We are now 1-0 heading into Game 2. Here we are now in Game 2. Technically have 3 lands in hand when you count the Emiria Shattered Skyclave. So we have turn 1 Savior, turn 2 Portable Hole, and then nothing for a little while. I like the power level of these cards in hand, but we definitely need to draw some viable stuff to curve out. It's a bit risky, but I'm going to go with the keep. This is very borderline. Because, again, we don't have anything to play turn 2, turn 3. But we have a solid 1-drop and a solid 4-drop. Good cheap interaction if our opponent's trying to outrace us here. If I draw one more land by the end of this game, I'm not going to want to have played this Emiria's Call. I think I'm just going to play Plains for now. Probably just have to take the 3 life when I play the Emiria Shattered Skyclave, if I need to play it on turn 4. Playing against green-white, there's a Lotus Cobra, beautiful target for Portable Hole. Got a Fateful Absence as well, but I'm just going to Portable Hole this. Again, willing to pay the 3 life on this Shattered Skyclave in case I top deck a land turn 4. What have you got coming for us? What do you have in store? Turn the music on for a bit here. Haven't had the music in a while. Mikaeus the Lunarch. Good enough that we can't get through it. Let's just get this out of the way while I have the mana for it, because we're definitely dumping all 4 mana into Historian next turn, all 5 mana into Loxodon on the turn after that. We are going to pay the 3 life. Get a Blade Historian down. Double up our damage output, which isn't that impressive when we only have a 1/1 on board, but it will be in the future. Portable Hole. They get to exile our Savior or our Portable Hole. Savior it is. Hopeful Initiate can eventually kill their Portable Hole. But I think that's our only way to get rid of it, and we don't even know if we're going to get the Savior to be that high power. So I might actually want to sack the Savior in case I draw a Luris or a Sarah Paragon. We'd actually want it engraved for those two. Venerated Loxodon is the draw. I can convoke something even if it's summoning sick, right? I think I can. Certainly can. Been a little while since I played with Convoke. They've got a board wipe, they've got the game in the bag. But if they don't, should be a relatively hard to get out of position for them. Invoke Justice, alright. That's reasonable. Any of these creatures can kill Mikaeus if they block. They'll be double striking as well. So if they block Blade Historian, they take 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. They can't block and kill Blade Historian? Just attack with everybody. Was not expecting Hopeful Initiate to be able to get to 2 counters, and now I do feel kind of dumb about sacking the Savior. Yeah, they have to just, like, chump Loxodon here. Or, no, they can block Initiate. No, that's exactly 12 if they block Initiate. Yeah, they literally have to chump. Jesus Christ. Blade Historian's nuts. I'm very glad I drafted that card there. But that was just a rough game for my opponent. They just didn't have much interaction there. Really wasn't expecting things to go that way. But I'll take it. We are 2-0 now, heading into game number 3. Opponent is on the play here, so we're on the draw. We have a really good curve. Turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. If I draw 1 land, and I have 3 turns to draw that land, I'm at a 39% chance to draw land right now. So 3 40% chances in a row. And if I hit once on one of those 40% chances, I'm in a great start to this game. So I'm going to keep it here. Especially if my opponent doesn't end up having a lot of cheap interaction and I can get into a position where I attack with 3 or more creatures, because then I'll have 4 mana ready for getting closer to Elspeth Conquer's Death. And of course my 4-drop I just drew. Alright, there we go. Emeria Shattered Skyclave guarantees we're curving out here. 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop. Exactly what we want to do. Alright, opponent does have the cheap interaction though, so we're not likely to flip a Legion's Landing particularly soon. Play this pre-combat to get extra damage in. And also convert that into extra life gain, still at 20 life, even though I paid 3 life for an Emeria. We have some tremendously powerful cards in our hand. However, pretty much none of them are castable right now. Luckily for us, immediately hit that plains. Let's go. Multiple really good interactive spells now. Kyodai can save one of our cards from a removal spell. If they don't play anything, we'll just flash in a Wandering Emperor and make a Samurai during their end step. We're in a very good position here to play around whatever ends up happening. Wolf, Spider, Queen. Can blow that up with a Fateful Absence, but not until it's already activated its ability, which means they get 2 2/1s with Menace and Reach here.
I'm hungry.
Not ideal for us. Alright. So 2 2/1s. What is the play here? Do I play a Kyodai now and then I flash in a Wandering Emperor and give first strike to whatever they double block? Right, because I'm going to have a 4/4 flash flying Kyodai here. Threatening a lot of damage, they might double block it. And of course I'll make Benalish Marshal indestructible so they can't double block and kill Marshal. That seems reasonable to me. We play Kyodai here, attack with everything to flip landing. If Wolf sticks around and both their spiders die, they can make 2 more spiders, which is kind of obnoxious. But I still don't feel like I should be attacking Lolth instead of just their face. I feel like I just attack their face with everybody. I feel like that only does like 5 damage though. But if I attack Lolth with everybody, then they might just let it all in. Try to get to a board wipe. That's not that bad for me if that's what they do, because I still have a really good setup turn here. I'm flipping my Adonto. Alright, they're just going to trade for my Vampire. If I play Wandering Emperor and give first strike, then they can attack her back for 2. Not actually that bad if they do that. But I can lose this. Choo-choo. Play History Benalia instead.
Nothing more. A gift.
And hold up a Fateful Absence for whatever they play this turn. This way we've got more power on the board for next turn, and I still have Wandering Emperor as interaction. And History Benalia is really nice here because it's setting up to just keep putting more power on the board, whatever's happening. We'll get another Knight next turn. So like if they board wipe us here, it's not even that good. Unless it's Languish. Languish would be bad. Actually, all of the black board wipes do get us here. The red ones don't. No, the red ones get us too. Alright, actually, if they have a board wipe in their black-red deck, it's going to be bad for us, because Languish is -X, and even if your creature's indestructible, if it goes below 0 toughness, it's going to die. If it goes to 0 toughness or below, it's going to die. And then the reason that a red board wipe would get us here as well is if they deal 4 damage to all creatures, but Benalish Marshal's not going to die to 4 damage, But Kyodai will die, which means that Kyodai dies, and then Banalish Marshal's sitting there on the board with 4 damage on it, and then it's like, oh, I'm not indestructible anymore, so it would die as well. So board wipes would still be bad for us there, but that's about it. And clearly, our opponent did not have a board wipe, so that is going to be game, and we're now 3-0, guaranteeing a solid run here, heading into game 4. Another kind of awkward hand here. Feels a little slow, like a little flooded out. We kind of have like a 4-land hand. We have a 1-drop and then a 5-drop with Loxodon, but I guess we can play that on turn 4 if we use the Usher. I need to draw well for this hand to actually do things and curve out. I mean, Usher makes up for it because we can still boast with Usher until they kill it. So we're still doing stuff. It's just not that good, just making a 1/1 every turn. So any turns that we don't get to play a creature here, we get to just boast with Usher. I don't really mind too much whatever they take here. I guess I'd be the saddest if they took Loxodon, so it's probably what they want to take. Take the Vanguard. I'm very okay with that. I've got an alternate 2-mana play. It's not that great, though. It's just a 1/1. But maybe this means they don't have a lot of good, cheap interaction, and they're just trying to make sure they don't take a ton of damage early. Cruel Celebrant. That's a bit annoying. Usher trades into that and everything. Just get the Loxodon down here. Buff these cards up so they can attack into the Cruel Celebrant. So this is a black-white deck with a very good little sacrifice card here. Whenever one of their creatures or planeswalkers dies, we're going to lose a life and they're going to gain a life. This is a deck that could be playing a decent amount of board wipey effects. So something we got to be worried about again. Not that my hand is particularly good at playing around that, although Selfless Savior begs to differ. I can boast for 2 mana and still Fateful Absence for 2 mana, so I actually might not want to play Savior. I might want to attack with everybody, Fateful Absence the Harvester after they crew it, and still just boast with the Usher. Probably not. I probably should have just went for pre-combat Savior, but I'm fairly certain we're casting a Fateful Absence right now. Hit for 9, they're down to 8. Yeah, Savior's just significantly better than a 1/1 with no text, but it always feels like losing value when I'm not dumping my mana into making a 1/1 off this Usher of the Fallen, because it's like it got an attack and I gotta get my value. Alright. Well, we're well on our way towards making 2 Angels to try to end the game. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They die if they block Selfless Savior. If they don't have removal. Might have been worth it not to attack with Savior, because if their play there was going to be like a 2-mana removal spell on Loxodon and then block and kill Savior, that would have been relatively bad for me, but it's all going to work out in the end, and we're going to be 4-0 heading into game 5. This is the one for, not for all the marbles, but for a good amount of them. This is the one that decides if we're going to be breaking even, leaving with all the gold that we paid for entry. Pretty good start for us. We're on the play with Hopeful Initiate, turn 1 to train up alongside any 2-power creature. And we do have a 2-mana 2-power creature, so let's go. Opponent's on green, and they do have a turn 1 1/1 human from Lovestruck Beast, so a decent start for them as well. Pelt Collector, Rockfall Veil. So when they play their Love-Struck Beast, the Pelt Collector is going to be a 2/2, and the Love-Struck Beast is going to be a 5/5 that can block. Yikes. I think we want to just make our board real scary, so let's go Legion's Landing. Untapped Emiria's Call for the Loxodon here, and the big is board. The big is board here. Venerated Loxodon's been a premium card for us today. Here comes Love-Struck Beast, I'm assuming. It sure is. And if I kill Love-Struck Beast, the Pelt Collector is going to be a 3/3 still. I still have some decent blockers. I get to flip my Legion's Landing by attacking here with everybody. Yeah, I'm gonna Fateful Absence this thing. Pelt Collector's a 3/3. They get a free kill on my 2/2 if I attack with literally everybody, which I'm not in love with. It does mean everything else gets in. They could double block Hopeful Initiate here. I kill Pelt Collector if they double block Initiate. I think I'm just attacking with these. Alright, they're going to scoop them up. They're over it. And that's just going to be a quick 5-0 for the mono white aggro deck, and we are guaranteed to get all of our gold back out of the event. Very, very good start here. Getting 2 random rares at least as well. Moving on to game number 6. Here we are in game 6. This is the first hand I think we genuinely just have to mulligan, because this hand doesn't do anything till turn 3, which is a decently big flaw for the aggro decks. It's especially a large flaw when we only have 2 lands in the hand, so not only are we not doing anything till turn 3, we're not even sure if we can do things on turn 3, because we don't have 3 mana in the opener. We're on the draw at least, so that's a little bit of a benefit for the hand, but I don't think it's enough to keep it. I'm going to take the mull here. This is significantly better. I know what I'm doing turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, and turn 4. I just need to draw 1 plains and I'm good. I have 3 turns to do that because I'm on the draw. So the plan is Legion's Landing, Phyrexian Missionary. Restoration of Agonjo gives us the 4th plains, if we can cast that off of a 3rd plains. And then we just curve all the way up. Very simple plan here. See what our opponent's on, maybe a more interesting, more intricate plan here. They're on blue-red at least, and a turn 1 Delver. Alright, blue-red spells. The likely archetype we're dealing with. Hopefully it takes a little while for the Delver to flip. If it flips turn 1, that's always going to be pretty devastating. I think in our last blue-red spells deck that we played, every time I cast Delver Secrets, it flipped turn 1, which was nuts. Right, blue-red spells here, of course, going to have tons of cheap burn spells to keep clearing our board, and Grim Lavamancer are going to be a particularly exceptional card against us as well, because they get to play another cheap burn spell like Lightning Bolt to kill our Missionary, and then they can exile both of those cards from their graveyard to kill our next 2 toughness or less creature. So it feels like a pretty rough matchup here, at least in terms of how they've drawn here. They can definitely keep us under control for a while. Alright, Shivan Devastator as a 2/2, I'm pretty okay with that. Got the lifelinker on board to work on outracing that. I have naturally drawn the 4th land, so technically I don't need the plains from Restoration now. It's kind of cool. Alright, they have flipped the Delver now, which is definitely bad for us. They're threatening 5 damage in the sky every turn. I do get to use this Restoration of Agonjo to ramp up. Just not really valuable when we have significantly more mana than we need in our aggro deck, but still kind of cool. I have no idea what we do here. They literally have a revealed counterspell. I don't even know which spell is weaker for us. Probably have to just go for Flashing in the Wandering Emperor. And hope they cast like a card draw spell here or something, but I'm pretty sure we've just lost this game. The opponent just has a really, really good start here with all the cheap interaction. And the cheap threats. Well, I know Wandering Emperor resolves if I cast it now. Exile the Insectile Aberration, then they hit Wandering Emperor for 1 with Grim Lavamancer. That's it's such a weak use of Wandering Emperor. And I just guarantee it gets killed, but it might be the only use of Wandering Emperor that I know resolves. Get a 3/4 that can make 1/1s next turn. Yeah, I gotta stem the bleeding here.
Run away. Maybe safer. You are not much of a roadblock.
Might be down to just one counterspell here. Alright, Lavamancer gonna ping the Emperor. Devastator gonna hit us for 2.
Still have much to learn.
We'll flip a Restoration of a Gonjo. I think our hand ordered by strongest card to weakest is Blade Historian, Adversary, Missionary, but Adversary might actually be better with Architect of Restoration on board than Historian is even. So I cast Missionary, then Historian, then I Adversary next turn, I think. Oh my god, I will absolutely take that. They do counter the Missionary. So we'll play the Historian there. Because I want to dump all my mana into Adversary. I want to have all 6 up when I try to cast this. Alright, Royal Eruption. Fair enough. That means no Royal Eruption for our Intrepid Adversary. Keep our bigger, juicier Lifelinker. Oh no, we can't because Lavamancer can shoot it down. They have 4 cards in their grave. I actually have to play History of Benalia. Because the way that this works is it's going to enter the battlefield as a 3/1 and then I dump a bunch of counters on it, which means they can kill it while it's still a 3/1 with Lavamancer. That's brutal. Probably get in with Architect first, see if I can get them to spend some removal on this, maybe. Here's a History of Benalia. I'm in a decent spot to outrace them here. We might be good. Uh-oh. Shoot the face. Hate that. Hate that. That's very suspicious. Down to 10. Hit me for 4 damage a turn with Devastator Lavamancer. But they can only use Lavamancer one more time. Oh, Maul of the Skyclaves is big. Maul of the Skyclaves is really, really big. Throw one of these cards into the sky so we can block Shivan Devastator. I can't afford to do this and kick an Adversary here. Kind of have to do it on Architect because it's the only creature big enough to survive them shooting it with Lavamancer. Flip Legion's Landing. Oh, I guess because I flip Legion's Landing, I'd have enough to Adversary kicked now, post-combat. What is in their hand? What is this, like a 5 damage burn spell or something? A 6, it's gotta be a 6 damage burn spell now because I've got the Architect to block. Now that they've used their graveyard, I can play the Adversary and know that they're not gonna shoot it. I'm so scared right now. If they have like bounce spell... If they have like bounce spell, burn spell, I'm dead. 2 mana to bounce Architect back to my hand, 1 mana to shoot me for 2, and then 1 mana to finish me off with Lavamancer. So they have Kazul's Fury is what they were banking on. Put me to 2, but they are now dead. That is a game. That was so close. That was so close. Oh my god, Wandering Emperor just casting it when it was uncounterable, actually kind of coming in clutch there, saving us a lot of damage from that Delver and gaining us exactly 2 life. And then we ended the game at 2 life. I still don't know if that was the right play, but definitely panned out in the end. I'll absolutely take it. We are now 6-0 heading into the final boss. If we win next game, that's a full undefeated run, so final boss time. Let's see what happens. Alright, here we are in the final game, on the play with a turn 1 Savior and then nothing till 4, but both of our 4-drops are great, and Sarah Paragon is really nice with cheap creatures. Sarah Paragon doesn't work with Savior as well as Luris does, where you can just keep recasting it. With the Paragon, you can only do it once, and then it's going to get exiled next time it goes into your grave. But it's still pretty good, so I'm going to keep this here. That same problem where I have nothing to do turn 2 and turn 3, but cross our fingers here, see if we can draw pretty well. I should have played Cave. I always forget the Cave works the opposite of the opposite of the slow lands. It's a fast land. You want to play in the early turns. Restoration of a Gonjo was a very good draw, because now we have a turn 3 play at least, even if we don't have a turn 2 play. They could have a Jwari Disruption. I would absolutely cry about it, but there is no way that not trying to cast Restoration of a Gonjo is correct here. Because the worst case scenario is it takes a counterspell out of their hand that could be used on Sarah Paragon or Wandering Emperor. Yep, Jwari Disruption every time. Goodbye, Restoration of a Gonjo. Mind Stone. They still have exactly 2 mana up for a Disdainful Stroke to counter something that costs 4 or more. There is no way on planet Earth that Dauntless Bodyguard is the right play here. Because we're only pressuring them for 1 damage a turn, so they can very easily sit here and do nothing and hold their counterspells up for the rest of the game. So I think I just need to play the less threatening card, which is actually Wandering Emperor here. I think I play Wandering Emperor in their end step and just make a 1/1. And then they'll be forced to use the counterspell during their turn, so they won't have mana up for an additional one. Although if they just hold all 5 mana up, then they will. Yeah, they might have a 2 mana counterspell for Emperor and then a 3 mana one for my next card. In which case, not a lot I can do about that. Because again, I'm not pressuring them at all right now. The Danto Vanguard actually is pretty reasonable, because that threatens them enough to potentially prompt a counterspell here. And it's a reasonable play if it doesn't get countered. Alright, we've got a board state now. And they're going to crack the Mind Stone to draw a card. Would actually love to see a 5th land here, so I could play Sarah Paragon and recast something from grave. Well, there's nothing for 1 mana in my grave anyway, so I guess not. Never mind, I lied. Adeline. Adeline is tremendously good, and will draw a counterspell from her opponent. It's also best to cast pre-combat, so slam her down, get her countered, and then attack. Not countered. Was this a Settle the Wreckage? Settle the Wreckage actually doesn't get me that bad. Yeah, Settle the Wreckage is incredibly okay with me. Because I can actually use the mana for Paragon, because then I can afford to play Paragon and recast a big spell from grave. Because Paragon can cast everything that's 3 mana or less. I actually kind of want this to be Settle the Wreckage. I'd like to turn the 1/1s and 2/1s into into lands. But it looks like it is not that. They're going to cycle Rafine's Tower and maybe play a 2-mana removal spell. Seal away, exile the Odonto Vanguard. Fair enough. We still hit for 4 here. We have a very good Adeline out. They're just going to pass turn. Oh. Blade Historian's so tempting. But if they have a counterspell for Historian or a Settler Wreckage, it's either is going to get me really bad. But then I still have a Sarah Paragon to try to, reestablish a board state. I don't have another option this turn, right? Like, the only thing I'm spending my mana on is some big card that's going to suck if it gets countered, so whatever. Main phase 1 Blade Historian. Let's get countered. It's not countered. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wait, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 10 damage is what I'm threatening here if I don't attack with Adeline to play around a Settle the Wreckage. This is only slightly worse against like an exile single target removal spell. I don't actually think I play around Settle, right? Because if it's Settle the Wreckage and then they don't kill Blade Historian, they're still just dead because I Paragon here. I'm still going to play around Settle the Wreckage. I think it's the only way they're getting out of this. Maybe it's Wandering Emperor. Adeline doesn't tap by attacking, so that would suck if that's the case. Because then it would have been way better to attack with Adeline. Sphinx's Rev, okay. So I would have killed them if I just attacked with Adeline. But they're still down to 4. What is this bodyguard on? It's on Savior, that's awkward. They really astronomically need to settle the wreckage now. Sort of attack with everything that doesn't matter if it gets settled. Okay, so they might have had it the whole time. I'm going to sack these because I have a Paragon. And I'll still get 3 lands. So yeah, it's possible they had settled last turn, but they went for Sphinx's Rev because they really wanted to settle like Adeline or Blade Historian or something good. And I wasn't attacking with any incredibly valuable creatures, so maybe I was wrong. Maybe they did have settle there. They just... Sphinx's Rev was the better play because of the way that I attacked. Alright, and they're just dead now. Settle the Wreckage did not flip the game for them because we didn't attack with our most valuable creatures, and that means we keep our lead and just crush them a few turns later than we would have if they didn't have Settle. Nice, swift victories today. Only took a little over an hour, and we've got a full 7-win deck from the mono white aggro deck that we've drafted here. Not much to say today. Sweet deck. White was tremendously open in this draft pot. I started intending to go green as the color I was most interested in, but then we really saw white stuff all over the place, and it was clearly the best place to be, as we can see getting rewarded with a 7-win run today. Again, not much else to say, no massive overperformers or underperformers. I guess the biggest overperformer was Venerated Loxodon. The card looks a little dirtily and awkward in some hands, but when you do have a hand where you get to go 1-drop, 2-drop, and then play a Loxodon turn 3 and buff both of them, you do make a really overwhelming board state if your opponent doesn't get to wipe it off. So, Venerated Loxodon, definitely one of the overperformers today that I'm a huge fan of. Other than that, anything else that did any crazy wild stuff? Blade Historian, yeah, these were probably the two cards of the deck today. Blade Historian and Venerated Loxodon, the big MVPs, so sweet stuff from the two of them and everything else that we drew. Really, really nice deck today, and we're going to claim our prize and get on out of here. So that is going to end today's video. Only a couple more days of 2022 left, so just a couple more Arena Cube drafts on the horizon. Stick around for those if you're interested. 2023 is going to be incredibly exciting for a multitude of reasons, but for all of you watching, it's going to be exciting for the Decathlon, the Arena Decathlon coming back. I will be doing all of those Arena Decathlon events. I don't know if I'm going to get a medal in every single Arena Decathlon, but I'm going to play each one and try them all out. So very exciting. Nice variety series of videos coming to you all in January, and I'm super pumped about that. Also going to be focusing a little more on the channel, but we'll be talking about that later, probably in like an update video, streaming more on Twitch and all that kind of stuff. I'm very pumped for 2023, and I hope you all are as well. But in the meantime, let's finish off 2022 with a bang with a couple more cubes. So again, that's what's on the horizon. But for all of you watching, I would just like to, as always, thank you again very much for being here, sticking around, watching the channel, all of that good stuff. And I'll see you all again very soon for some more Magic Arena.